insurance companies that have gotten rich on billions of dollars of money that should go directly to the people. The money should go to the people. That's you. So they can buy their own health insurance, which will give far better benefits at much.
What if I told you that everything happening right now, the inflation, the border crisis, the endless wars, the media panic over one man, is not random? What if it's all part of a 300-year-old blueprint, a plan so calculated, so precise, that it has toppled empires, crushed civilizations, and stolen the wealth of billions of ordinary people? And what if Donald Trump, well, for all his flaws, for all his controversies, is the first American leader in generations to actually name it, challenge it, and fight back against it? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will never look at global news the same way again. I'm not here to sell you a political party. I'm not left. I'm not right. I'm someone who has spent years studying how financial systems actually work. Not the textbook version they teach in school, but the real version. The version that explains why the same problems keep happening decade after decade, administration after administration. Why does every country that gets an IMF loan end up poorer? Why does every war seem to make the same small group of people richer? Why do leaders who try to put their own citizens first, whether it's Lincoln, whether it's Kennedy, whether it's Gaddafi, end up destroyed? There is a pattern. And today we're going to break it down step by step. Let's start with something most Americans have never heard of. There is a place called the City of London. And I'm not talking about the regular city where red buses run and tourists take photos near Big Ben. I'm talking about a 1 square mile financial district inside London that operates under its own laws, its own government, its own police force, completely separate from the UK government. It has existed in its current form since 1694, when the Bank of England was established. And for over 3 centuries, it has functioned as the nerve center of global finance. It has its own Lord Mayor, and separate from London's mayor. It has its own representative in the British Parliament called the Remembrancer, whose job is literally to protect the city's interests against any laws that Parliament tries to pass. Think about that. A financial district with its own spy in Parliament. According to financial historians and researchers, the City of London is essentially the world's oldest offshore financial center, a hub that controls trillions in global capital flows, tax havens, and what researchers call the spider's web of shell companies and hidden wealth structures that span the globe. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Analysts who study how powerful financial networks operate have identified what they call a financial kill chain, a predictable, repeatable series of steps used to capture and drain the wealth of any nation or community. Let's go through all 7 steps. And I promise you, by step 4, you're going to start recognizing exactly what's been happening to America. Step 1. Infiltration and influence. First, you embed your people inside the target nation's financial system, judiciary, media, and government. Not overnight, over decades. You fund universities, you fund think tanks, you create NGOs, you place your people in central banks, in regulatory agencies, in media ownership. Sound familiar? According to research published by academics at Harvard and Columbia, the revolving door between Wall Street, the Federal Reserve, and Washington, D.C. involves hundreds of individuals cycling through these institutions. Economists call it regulatory capture. The entity doesn't need to be controlled by force. It just needs to be captured by relationships, by money, and by ideology. Step 2, debt entrapment. Once you're inside, you begin the debt cycle. Nations are encouraged, sometimes pressured, into taking on massive loans. Wars are started, crises are manufactured, and every crisis creates new debt. The key insight here is this: the debt is never meant to be paid off. It is designed to be permanent. Think about the U.S. national debt. $34 trillion and climbing. Or think about what economist John Perkins, a former economic hitman as he calls himself, described in his explosive book, how the IMF and World Bank would lend money to developing nations on terms they could never repay, then seize collateral, ports, natural resources, military access rights. This is not conspiracy theory. Perkins testified to this in Congress and in interviews seen by millions. Step 3, asset identification. While the debt is accumulating, a detailed inventory is being taken. Every natural resource, every industry, every trade route, every skill skilled labor pool, every port. This is what intelligence agencies, international banks, and consulting firms do in every nation they engage with. They map the assets, they price the assets, they determine what's worth taking and when. Step 4, economic destabilization. Now they weaponize instability. Markets are manipulated, sanctions are applied, proxy conflicts are funded, terrorist groups appear out of nowhere, and somehow always seem to target the areas richest in natural resources. Look at what happened in Libya after Gaddafi announced a gold-backed African currency. Look at what happened in Iraq. Look at what happened in Syria. This is documented in declassified State Department cables, in leaked emails, and in the testimony of former CIA officers. Conflict is not a side effect, it is a tool. Step 5, debt for asset swaps. When the nation can no longer service its debts because the economy has been deliberately destabilized, the creditors move in. We'll restructure your debt, they say, but you'll need to hand over these assets. Greece handed over its ports. Detroit handed over its water system. Developing nations have signed away mining rights, oil fields, and agricultural land. The collateral is always real. The debt is always artificial. Step 6, extraction and exploitation. Now the real prize is collected. Wealth flows offshore through a network of shell companies, tax havens, and financial instruments so complex that even top regulators struggle to trace them. According to the Tax Justice Network, over $21 to $32 trillion in private wealth is hidden in offshore structures globally, more than the GDP of the United States and China combined. This is not money earned through productivity. This is money extracted from working people, from communities, from nations, and hidden where it can never be taxed, never be recovered, never be reinvested. Step 7, collapse and abandonment. And finally, when there's nothing left to extract, they leave. Detroit, the Rust Belt, the post-industrial American Midwest. These were not economic accidents. They were the final stage. The factories close, the jobs go, the drugs come in because someone always profits from despair. And the people are left to fight each other over the scraps while the wealth has already been moved offshore. But here's what they didn't count on: the people fighting back. Now let's talk about Donald Trump. And I want to be very clear about something. This is not a pro-Trump channel or an anti-Trump channel. What this is an analysis channel. And what the analysis shows is this: Trump represents something far larger than himself. He is the public face of what political analysts are calling a sovereigntist movement. A block of old money American families, military figures, intelligence insiders, and business leaders who have decided that the financialization of America must stop. They watch China and Russia say no. They watch smaller nations get crushed for saying no. And they decided that America, the most powerful nation on earth, would be the one to break the cycle. This explains things that otherwise make no sense. Why does he keep attacking the Federal Reserve, an institution no president touches? Why did he impose tariffs that directly targeted the financial networks that globalization built? Why does he keep talking about America first in terms that go far beyond just trade? Because this is not a political campaign. This is a civilizational realignment, and the reaction from the establishment, the media attacks, the legal cases, the assassination attempts, is exactly what you would expect from a system fighting for its survival. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, and what we are living through right now has happened before. In 312 AD, the Roman Emperor Constantine faced the Praetorian Guard, the deep state of Rome, at the Battle of Milvian Bridge. They had controlled emperors for over a century. Constantine defeated them. He didn't just win a battle, he restructured the entire power system of the known world. In 1776, a group of men who considered themselves loyal Englishmen, not revolutionaries, petitioned for their constitutional rights. When those rights were denied, they took matters into their own hands. They were not trying to destroy the system. They were trying to restore it. That is exactly the framing we need to understand today. This is not a revolution against America. This is a fight to restore the original promise of America: individual sovereignty, private property rights, and a balance of power. Those three things, that's all, and they are worth fighting for. So what does this look like in 2025? First, the tariff war. When Trump imposed sweeping tariffs, the mainstream media called it economic ignorance. But look at who screamed the loudest. It wasn't American workers, it was the financial networks that had spent decades building supply chains designed to maximize profit extraction from cheap labor abroad while gutting American manufacturing at home. The tariffs directly threatened step 6 of the kill chain, extraction and exploitation. Second, the BRICS expansion. Russia, China, India, Brazil, South Africa, and now a growing list of nations are actively building an alternative financial system that bypasses the dollar and the IMF. The petrodollar, the system that gives America its financial dominance, is under direct challenge. This is not happening in a vacuum. This is the result of decades of nations experiencing the financial kill chain firsthand and deciding they've had enough. Third, the domestic battle. Doge, the dismantling of certain federal agencies, the attacks on what critics call the administrative state. This is the sovereigntist movement attempting to break the grip of the unelected bureaucratic class that serves as the enforcement arm of the financial system domestically. Whether you like Trump or hate him, these are the fault lines that will define the next decade. So what does this mean for you? An ordinary American? First, understand that you are not powerless. The financialist system depends on your ignorance and your compliance. Every time you understand how debt works, how money is created, how offshore wealth is hidden, you become harder to manipulate. Second, build local. The collapse and abandonment playbook only works if communities have no local resilience. Local food systems, local businesses, local relationships, local currencies. These are not fringe ideas. They are exactly what the financial system fears most because they cannot be captured by offshore contracts. Third, understand that this is a long game. This is not one election cycle. This is not one president. This is a generational struggle. The people fighting on the sovereigntist side, and whether you agree with their methods or not, are playing a 50-year game. You should be too. Finally, and this is critical, don't wait for a savior. Trump is one man. He will not be president forever. What matters is whether the movement he represents outlasts him, outgrows him, and builds institutional alternatives that cannot be captured, co-opted, or collapsed by the very system it is fighting. The question is not whether you trust Trump. The question is whether you trust yourself and your community enough to build something worth protecting. If this video opened your eyes to something you hadn't seen before, I ask you to do one thing: share it. Not because of views or algorithms, but because the most powerful weapon against a system that survives on secrecy is simple awareness. The more people who understand the playbook, the harder it becomes to run it. Subscribe if you want to go deeper. We have upcoming videos on the history of the Federal Reserve, the truth about the petrodollar, and the real story behind BRICS. Links to every source referenced in this video are in the description below. I'll see you in the next one.